Okay, so this is called Driving Culture Change. It's about the Arduino traffic light that we built. So, yes, our build is green. And it really is green, actually.
Why isn't it blue?
Why isn't it blue?
Oh,
It is
we'll
blue.
talk about
It is blue.
that. Oh yeah, sorry, it is blue. You're right, it's blue.
It's blue. Yeah. Okay. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Jenkins and the blue indicator, but there's a story about how I don't know if I'm getting the story right, but basically in Japan, they consider this to be a shade of blue. And so they call the traffic lights, which are green, they call them blue. And so in a nod to the Japanese heritage of the maintainer of Jenkins, they made the green indicator blue, which doesn't make sense to me. They could just make it green and call it blue, like the Japanese do. But we're talking about this, so I guess they've done something.
What do they call green?
Green, they call it blue. They call it blue. And they're, anyway, that's not what this talk is about. Look it
It's
up.
actually very important because it wasn't that long ago our specs went green on Jenkins, and we all said, "Why is it blue?" So
The first time I saw it, I was very confused. Yeah, I was like, oh, the build terminated? It didn't complete normally? Why isn't it green? And yeah, it
I
was
was like,
blue.
it's not red, ship it.
There is, there you go. So recently we've installed the Green Balls plugin, and our Hudson is green. Anyway, I'll give you a little bit of history. This thing was working earlier, I tested it.
Are you getting a network?
Yay. Okay. Before we had the skunk, we had an automated test suite. We had about 75% coverage. I went out and I actually did something that I've done only 2 times now, and I made it a requirement of our build to pass. You needed to actually hit exactly the coverage that was in the configuration file. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this. In Archive, you can say either it's this value or above, or you can say it has to be exactly this value. And so I said it has to be exactly this value, and when you're increasing the coverage, you should increase it so that everybody then has to meet the higher level. And that doesn't mean that you can decrease the coverage and it'll still pass, but there should be a certain amount of shame that goes with that, and it worked. And both times I thought, eventually people are going to start complaining to me. They're going to come to me and they're going to say, Alf, it's not reasonable to have 100% code coverage. This is ridiculous. And I waited for that day to come. And I waited, and I waited, and I waited. And long story short, we have 100% code coverage today, which is awesome. I think we could debate that, whether that's worth doing. I think it's very good that you can't commit a single line of code that's not covered, which means that it's hard to get that creep in of, we've got uncovered code. On the other hand, yeah, there's a lot of tests that are kind of suspect, I think, to cover those other cases. So we won't debate about that. But we've got 100% code coverage, which is I think a lot better than 75% code coverage. Anyway. We had individuals focusing attention on the test failures. Mostly it was me. And I would go and I'd bang around people's desks and say, hey, the tests aren't passing. And that worked for a small team. Our team grew, and the more aggressive our schedules got, the more people we had doing different things and trying to meet different requirements, the more difficult it got for one or a handful of people to really keep the test passing. And so today, yeah, we have our spec suite alone has 6,855 tests and covers 100% of our code. We also have a Cucumber test suite, and we have, which I don't know, I didn't look up the numbers, but it's very extensive, and we're using that to do all of our integration testing.
Hey, Alf, just to let you know, that's about 1.5 times the number of tests it takes to get something on Mars, so nice work.
Is it? Wow.
That's pretty awesome.
I didn't know that. That is interesting. I wonder. I wonder if our website is actually more complicated than it probably is. But
It probably is, it undoubtedly is.
maybe it doesn't have to be.
The phone book on Mars
I
is
think
pretty
someone has
short.
said that before.
What was that?
The phone book on Mars is pretty short.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah. We've also got JCOV, a Jasmine test suite measured with JCOV, and I think that's around 80% coverage right now.
It's a 76.
76.
76.6.
Okay. So we have a lot of tests. We have a lot of tests, and they can fail, and we want to make sure that they're always passing. So how do you do that? Well, this was our solution. I don't know if you can really make it out, but this is the skunk, right? He's got like the little white on his head, and he's got a little Nerf gun that says "Test this." QA. So what we did was we introduced a skunk. I came in one day to the stand up, and I said, "This is the skunk. You're gonna get this if you break the build. If you cause the test to fail, you're gonna get this. And if you see somebody has the skunk, then go and give them a hard time, right?" So the idea was to shame people who were not, who weren't paying attention to the tests, and try to pull them into that ethic of always keeping the test passing. Worked really well. A lot of our team members had no idea what a skunk was. We had a guy from Uzbekistan, and he thought it was cute, and which it is actually. It's a little plush woodland animal skunk, and it's very cute. But people didn't know what a skunk was. But that wasn't the biggest problem. I mean, people went along with it, and it worked. And one day I got to work. I think about 3 months ago now. I got to work. And I don't write any code anymore, not very much. And the skunk was in my chair wearing my headset. I knew that I hadn't broken the build. So I knew that it was time, and I had suspected this for a long time, but I knew that it was time to retire the skunk. So I took it home.
Fire the skunk?
Huh?
You do that?
I retired it. I didn't fire it. Actually, it's going to come back out of retirement at some point. But
He took it home, which means you can visit him and then.
yeah, you can still see the skunk. It's you can harass me for breaking the build, which I didn't do. But so after a while, it didn't work, and so I took it home and I thought about it, and I tried to figure out why wasn't the skunk working. What was it? What was wrong with the skunk? And eventually, I realized that really the key problem was that, well, two things. Well, I guess one thing, but they're kind of the same thing. The problem was that our test suite was not stable. You could run it 3 times in a row and probably get 3 different results, even though they're supposed to be pass-fail. I mean, it would fail for no reason, and you'd go and you'd see who checked in the last commit, and then you could go and give them the skunk, and he'd say, well, I didn't actually cause it to fail. And so that was really the problem. I mean, ultimately, personal responsibility only goes so far. I can go to one person and say, you broke the build, but if it's not his fault that the build is failing, then he's not necessarily going to go and solve that problem. And it might, in our case, it's actually a pretty big problem that's going to take a lot of work from a lot of people. And so if the build itself is unstable, then you can blame an individual for that, and it'll just never get solved. You just get down to, well, I didn't break the build, and when the build fails, then you have to go and figure out, oh, well, should I actually shame somebody for this? Does it make sense? So it didn't make sense anymore. So what I'm trying to drive towards now, and this is a work in progress, is team responsibility. We can get the team to take responsibility for the build, then they'll share the load, and everybody can do their part to address the problem. So what I'm actually trying to accomplish with the traffic light is to put something out that's hard to ignore, that everybody can see, even if they're not a member of our particular team, everybody can see that our build is passing right now. You guys can all see that. You don't have commit access or read access to our repository. You don't have access to our Jenkins instance, but if you walk by and you see this on the floor, you know our build is passing. And that's what I'm trying to get to, team ownership of the test suite. So I had to put together an architecture diagram for you to explain how all of this works, because it's so complicated. We've got an Arduino traffic light, which is this guy right here. There's an Arduino board here, and it wires into this box, which has a relay board. And that relay board controls 3 of these 4 AC plugs, 110 volt plugs that these lamps are plugged into right now. This isn't the final instantiation of it, but all the Arduino board has to do is set a pin high, and one of these lights will go on. That's it.
So how do you interface that with our spec? Does that actually connect directly to your
Check the diagram. So the Arduino, so it's an Arduino board with an Ethernet shield, and it uses just an HTTP protocol, and what it does is it registers itself with TLC, which is our traffic light controller, and this just maintains a list of all of the notifying devices that are out there, of which there are currently 1. And then when Jenkins notifies TLC of a build status, then it will go out and notify it, call the HTTP endpoint on all of the Arduino traffic light.
Alf, can you explain what Jenkins is?
The Jenkins is it's continuous integration server.
I'm not necessarily asking for. I mean, it's just the name of the thing, and
Oh,
I'm just
so
suggesting that perhaps not everyone in the room knows.
yes. So Jenkins is what we use for continuous integration. Continuous integration server basically just waits for updates on the Git repository, and then once there's an update, it reruns the tests, and it supports a number of plugins. It's a fork from a project called Hudson. It forked about 6 years ago when Oracle took over, purchased Sun, and decided that since it owned the Hudson name, even though it doesn't own the Hudson software, since it owned the Hudson name, that it was going to tell the open source developers that they were going to use all the Java.NET tools to manage. They couldn't use Google Groups, they couldn't use anything, they had to use all the Java stuff. And so, being an open source project and, open source developers being how they are, they forked the project and created Jenkins.
It has a much nicer icon though.
Yes, a much nicer icon. I like Jenkins better than Hudson. It's, for a while they were the same, and then, whatever.
How long does it take your test suite to run? How many days does it take?
Say
It
2
takes-
minutes and then don't say anything else.
No, it's not.
No, it takes the whole thing about 15 minutes to run.
Wow, that's impressive.
We're always trying to
No, it's faster.
figure out how we
I mean,
could
that's really
speed it
fast.
up.
That's
It's slow. It's way too slow.
Way too slow.
No, but it still strikes me as not really.
That's just the RSpec tests, or also including your?
That's everything. Our spec tests are
Yeah,
probably
that's-
more like
that's less than I expected.
5 minutes.
Our spec takes about 3 minutes.
3
That's
minutes.
including your cucumber integration
That's
test?
astonishing.
Cucumbers.
The 15 minutes includes the cucumber, includes the.
How did you make a suite of browser-driven integration tests actually fast?
It's not browser driven. It's mostly web around. Or is it Capybara?
Right, so that runs the browser, is what I meant.
I'm sorry.
I mean, that fires up a browser and asks it to do things, so.
It doesn't have to, no.
Oh,
So
yeah,
you're just
yeah,
using
you're
grind
using the
tests, not
non-JavaScript
selenium
based
or
ones, okay,
something.
yeah.
So it doesn't have to use an external browser. I mean, I'm not even talking about using a headless
I know what
browser.
you're
Yeah,
saying.
yeah.
Yeah.
So we do have suites that are not run as part of the set. Yeah, yeah. Okay. So yes, our Cucumber tests that are part of the suite are not working with a browser.
Are you using some solution to run JavaScript headless, or is it you just testing the HTML?
Yes, we're using Jasmine with Yeah, we're using Jasmine for that.
Okay, but Jasmine as separate unit tests of
As
the
unit
JavaScript,
testing
not
and
as part of the, so your Cucumber tests don't execute the JavaScript
That's
on the
correct.
page.
That's
Okay.
correct. That's correct.
That's what we've never found a way to do fast, but we do in all of our projects. So
Have you looked at Phantom.js?
I haven't personally. I know Judson's glance at it. Probably worth a revisit. Our solution has just been to do everything in Selenium, but that means our test suites sometimes take 45 minutes to run.
I don't know if you've ever met Doug McInnes at one of these meetups. He wrote JCov, which we've open sourced from here. He does a lot of our more advanced JavaScript work, and he has recently gotten Poltergeist, which uses Phantom.js to do some headless Cucumber testing for our tracking, which is huge.
Does Phantom.js, is it actually way faster, or is it
Um,
slightly faster?
It's faster than using a real browser, and it gives you the ability to do screenshots and everything of what was actually rendered.
So we tried Capybara WebKit, and it actually seemed very faster than Firefox.
Oh, really? Oh, interesting.
And it was more, it broke on more things.
Okay, yeah, I don't know, I don't personally have that experience. So ultimately, TLC here is going to be like kind of a many-to-many where you've got multiple builds that are being monitored by TLC, and then it'll map those to multiple traffic light controllers so that independent teams can each have their own controller. That's the direction we're going in. So, demo.
Break the build.
Here's
Break
the
the build.
moment. Here's the moment where it all goes awry. That's what you want to see. You want to see me break the build, right?
You guys are assuming it's not already broken.
You see it's green right now.
Wait. It's not green, it's blue.
Application controller,
Whoa.
red.
If you break it, it'll take 15 minutes for the line to change, right?
No. Oh, so I've got a. Hold on. I got something weird happening with Keynote here. It's like trying to
Yes.
take over everything.
It detected too few times.
Yeah, too few times. I had to just open a new one, right?
My God.
Could you switch to the R tab, please?
That's perfect.
Okay, wise guy. Here you go. Are you happy now? Okay. Okay. Just try to forget that those other tabs are there.
What tab?
Yeah, there's two S's in password. I got it that time. Alrighty. So we do have a demo here. Oh, actually, you know what? I actually don't have this. I don't have this repository checked out.
All right.
Do you have it?
Yeah, I'll get it.
All right. Okay, so let me.
Close our eyes for a minute and switch the chords.
Yeah. No. Okay. So here we'll cheat. So this is a shortcut to TLC itself where you can go and just set it directly to yellow, green, red. So yeah, version API because it will change. Oh, someone broke the build. This is something actually separate. I'll show you in a second. Actually, I'll show you here. This is kind of fun.
Put in orange.
I don't understand orange. That's a 404. Orange is a 404.
It won't run both the red and the yellow.
That's our initialization sequence. So there you go. Currently red. Yeah, so they're physical relays that are all mounted on a single board. It was like an $8 board that I ordered through Amazon. And basically what we've got an Ethernet cable that we've salvaged, and connected in ground, 5 volts, and then 4 of the pins into here, and these are just directly, or just wired into the relay controller, so that we can control the lights. Code is very simple. I'll show you a little bit of it, except that my keyboard doesn't work. For some reason, Command Tab is not working for me. Nothing's working.
Try all those tabs that
Maybe it's
Yeah.
like it's going to.
We finally proved that the mouse is a first-class interface, and keyboards shouldn't be
You
dominant.
know? Yeah. The keyboard really does take longer. I just think it's faster. There are studies that show that, by the way.
Yeah.
I don't know who they.
I noticed this in editing screencasts. There would be fancy keyboard combinations that I think are faster, but
Uh-huh.
I actually edit them down because they're taking too long. Just like I noticed that looking for the key combination, actually, there's another edit.
Yeah. So if you can get it into your muscle memory, it's faster.
But I'm saying these are things that I would have sworn were in my muscle memory. And still, objectively, looking in the edit, I'm like, wow, that takes longer.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh,
It's
interesting.
often faster just to type the damn thing out.
Interesting.
Yes, and. It could have gone differently, but he just said yes, and.
Yes, and I have this example here of Arduino code. So Arduino code is basically C, and this is not an example of how you should write your Arduino code. This is an example of how when one person starts and then another person continues, and then all you really care about is getting that little light to change. This is how your code ends up.
So what's the test coverage on the Arduino?
Big fat goose egg.
You need a second set of traffic lights.
Yeah, it needs to just be self-driving, right?
It's just traffic lights all the way down.
Then there's some turtles at the end.
So anyway, basically it all comes down to this loop here where I don't know how to explain it. I haven't been in this code in a long time, and
So, Alf, you wrote the Arduino code?
I wrote some of it.
Okay. But you don't write code for YP anymore?
I do sometimes. What?
So what you're saying is mostly you got your job so that you don't have to write code for the company anymore, but you get to play with Arduino.
Yeah, I mean,
You are
I have people who do that for me. No, this is part of a culture initiative I've been driving, and no, I haven't done most of this code. Yeah. So that's why I can't really tell you much about what it does, except that we have basically it comes down to steady red is just a digital write. I mean, ultimately, all we're doing is we're wiring up an HTTP request to a command in Arduino that says set these pins high. It's very simple stuff. It's like almost embarrassingly simple, yeah.
How many people did your team get to before you sort of felt like you needed this kind of approach to sort of retune the culture to watching the test? Because you said it with a smaller number of people, it kind of worked by itself.
Yeah, I think. So he's asking how many people were on our team before we got to a point where this kind of approach was really necessary. So the original team I think was around 6 developers, was it, Reed? Yeah. I'm sorry? Including the test automation team that was writing the Cucumber tests. And that worked fine for individual, or just people saying, banging the drum and saying, hey, the tests need to pass. Everybody could be in a single room. You could announce that the builds are failing, and everybody knew and couldn't really deny it. And It was easy. And then, yeah, I think we doubled that team size, and it started getting a little bit harder to keep that control. And then, you know, schedules got more aggressive, so everybody was under more pressure, and it just kind of started to get to a point where it wasn't happening. The build wasn't passing often enough, and that's when we instituted the skunk. And you know, I think the skunk was working pretty well, with the exception that it wasn't solving the overall problem of the stability of the test suite. I think
visibility seems like it'd be good at any size. I mean, how many people do you need to have an Arduino traffic light? One. Don't you want an Arduino traffic light?
Yeah.
Seriously, that's awesome.
So yeah, we've got this blog, engineering.yp.com. There's nothing about the traffic light on it yet, but I promise there will be.
I no longer want a pony.
Well, what?
I don't want a pony anymore. I want an Arduino traffic light.
So we'll open source the Arduino code and the TLC code.
Can you also open source the hardware and I mean just a list of components?
Yeah. We'll include that in the blog post. We'll talk about what we ended up using. I've got a set of, you know, the final traffic light. We originally thought about, you know, wouldn't it be awesome, right? We have a physical traffic light in the office, and you know, it would be awesome, but you know, it's like $150 to $200. You got to haul it into the office. You got to build a stand for it. You know, it's hard to mount, and so, you know, reality kind of set in, and you know, we're building something that basically it's going to be composed of these lenses, which I purchased from you know, that's bugging me actually. Hang on a second. So these lenses are actually they're actually gels for like a DJ light, and I've sprayed them with a frost spray to cloud them up a bit so that you can just see the glow of the light. I bought some puck lights from Lowe's, and they're just like the under counter lights that you would put in your kitchen. For like $20, you get 3 puck lights with xenon bulbs, and they all plug in independently. So you can also get LED lights, but they didn't work with this kind of setup. So we'll just have a black traffic light rectangle with the puck lights and with the lenses in them. Yeah.
I hate to be that guy. If there was a commercial product that did this stuff 5 or 6 years ago, it was a few $100 though. It was like a glow. It was an orb that glowed different colors.
Yeah, the ambient orb, right?
Ambient orb.
Yeah.
An ambient orb.
The ambient orb. So I looked for the ambient orb, actually, and I don't think they're making it anymore. There's still an ambient site. An interesting thing about that thing, I think it costs about $100.
Yeah, and then they had a service that you'd use their
Yeah.
servers to connect.
They use
Yeah.
packet-based.
Yeah, it's a pager network. They use the pager network.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the
So yeah, we decided not to use the pager network for ours, but you know, the mileage may vary.
And
Yeah.
did you consider using a Raspberry Pi for this?
We talked about it. I think we had more people that were familiar with Arduino, but I don't think there's any reason you couldn't use a Raspberry Pi. I don't know. Does it have output pins that are easy to
It's got
connect to?
USB.
As USB. Okay. So you, but for the output to the relays,
one right here.
for the output to the relays, is it as easy as
It's the
just a
same
pin,
thing
or
as that. So you would need to add a relay board to it. But
Okay.
it's a Linux computer, so you can use JS or whatever you want.
yeah? I didn't want to use a relay board because I wanted the relays actually to be inside of the.
You have a jumper cable from this. to
Okay.
your relay.
Okay.
It's the same in-out as the Arduino, but it's
Oh, it is. I see.
just a generic Linux computer.
Okay.
And it's $35.
Okay. I think Arduino is about the same price. Yeah. So there you go.
I assume everyone's seen the Nerf gun.
They do different things. That one's programmed.
aims
can,
at the person who broke the bill. It's like
I haven't seen that, but
It's
yeah,
like
people
taking
have been
this
talking about
envelope
doing something
far.
like that. Yeah. Other questions? Okay, thanks everybody.